Hi, I'm Leah Condis. My pronouns are she, her. My current role with Minnesota PRSA is volunteer liaison. So I guess that makes me qualified to lead this career copy. Um, I work at Padilla. We're a communications company. Um, I've had the privilege of working with a number of nonprofits as clients. And in my spare time, one of my volunteer activities is related to gun violence prevention. And I will pass the mic to Sarah.
Hi, everybody. I'm Sarah Bamani, she, her pronouns. I am the Strategic Communications Manager at Animal Humane Society and am also serving as the DEI officer for Minnesota PRSA. In my spare time, my main volunteer gig is with We Can Ride, which is a therapeutic horseback riding program. I'll throw it over to Paul.
Good morning, everyone. I see lots of friendly faces out there. I'm Paul Omat. I currently run my own PR firm, Omat and Associates, focusing on crisis and critical issue stuff. Within Minnesota PRSA, I've been volunteering on and off for a long time. I've taught some of the APR classes. Currently, I'm mentoring people going for becoming a fellow within PRSA, and I've chaired the National PRSA Advocacy Committee. So pretty active in PRSA for the last 30 years or so. I'll throw it over to Kenny.
All right. Yes, Kenny Devine. I'm with Padilla as well. Lee is my supervisor, so this should be fun today. I've been here just coming up on 10 years in September, which is exciting. My nonprofit volunteer service, I'm currently on the board of Best Prep, which is an organization that helps with financial literacy for high school students and business education. Serve with PRSA right now with the Student Relations Committee, which is a lot of fun. So I see Jill on the call here today. And then lastly, currently serve on the Regent Candidate Advisory Council, which helps select the regents of the University of Minnesota system. So a lot of education kind of based nonprofit work. And I will pass it to Alora.
Hi, I'm Alora Jones. I currently work for Girl Scouts on their Marcoms team. I am actually in between dedicated volunteer roles right now. So maybe Leah, Marshall, you'll have something for me to do later here, but spent many years volunteering, including for organizations like Outdoor Afro, Minneapolis Park and Rec Board, Minnesota Children and Nature Connection. So excited to talk about these experiences today. Are we going all the way around the room, Leah?
Well, I thought about that. What do you guys want to do? Here's what I was going to do. I was going to do our prepared questions, and then maybe when we get to the Q&A part, like if you want to ask a question, you could do the same little intro for yourself before you ask a question. Or if no one has questions, we could just do the intros part because that's a good point. Alora, like I already made a note. Well, first of all, thank you for working brave. That's a Padilla belief. In case you can't tell, I'm here at Padilla in a conference room, thus the weird background. But we have a belief at Padilla called work brave, and Alora just demonstrated it by saying in front of this whole group of people in a meeting that's being recorded that she's between volunteer gigs. I'm like, yes, Alora, thank you for saying that. I'm also interested in your park and rec board experience, so maybe we can talk about that later. But Alora, since we ended with you, maybe we can kick off with you and talk about how service outside of work contributed to your leadership growth and resilience.
Yeah, definitely. I numerous ways, like too many to name, but I actually started volunteering in like a professional capacity pretty early in my career. I had just started my first job. I was working a second job and trying to pursue a web design certificate for some reason. So I was really busy and it was not a great time. But it was a great fit. I was finding myself really wanting to serve my community in different ways. I was working with the environmental folks and had great connections in the National Park Service. So I saw a beautiful intersection to do so with Outdoor Afro when they made their call for leaders. And what I found from saying yes to that first kind of opportunity is that one opportunity kind of leads to the next when you just make a habit of saying yes to things. So while it was busy and it was kind of a juggling act there for a while, I have no regrets about all of the volunteer experiences that I've gained over the years. And I really feel like it's contributed to my growth in my career a lot, if for no other reason, just than the connections that you make and the people that you meet, particularly if traditional networking settings are not your thing. Volunteering is a really, really great way to build one's network, I found.
I love that you bring up early in your career, Alora, because I feel like sometimes maybe when you're just out of school and just getting started, maybe you have a little bit of imposter syndrome. Like I'll really credit another agency I used to work for. I shared this during our prep call. So I worked at Weber Shandwick for 15 years, and at the time there was somebody, part of her job was to get Weber Shandwick employees connected on boards. And so she came to me and she's like, "Oh my gosh, Resources for Child Caring is looking for board members. You have kids, maybe you'd be interested in this." And I'm like, okay." So I tried it, and my legacy, I guess, is I'm a one-term board member generally. Like I do my 3 years and then I'm out for whatever reason. Maybe it's on to the next opportunity. But another thing that Weber Shandwick did was this telling your story workshop for nonprofits. And so there would be like a series of workshops for nonprofits, and then you would sit down with one nonprofit and consult. And again, like as a younger employee, it's like, oh, it felt kind of stressful. But, I had supervisors that are like, you can do this, you get paid to do this work. And I did find like, by sitting down with those nonprofits, I'm like, they're right. I do know stuff. And the nonprofits were so grateful. So that all felt really good. Um, I'll say one more thing and then I promise to let the panelists talk too. I love what you said, Alora, about saying yes. I also want to give permission to people to say no. So I'll give an example. I went to caucuses recently. It was only my second time doing it. The first time I did it was during the pandemic and it was online and it was super weird. So I thought, well, I'm going to go in person and check it out. There's a young man running for Minneapolis City Council that used to babysit my kids. So I was kind of curious about that too. So I went and I watched this whole thing unfold. Turns out one of the people in the room is a neighbor of mine who knows things. So she and I got together for coffee after that. And I was like, what just happened? And she explained it all. And um, so she invited me to a meeting at her house on Sunday. And I was talking about my caucus experience. And people are like, "Are you a delegate?" I'm like, "Nope, I didn't raise my hand for anything." And they're like, "How did you get out of that?" I said, "Because I know my capacity." And my husband was there too. And I'm like, I'm pretty sure he's here just to make sure I don't sign on for anything else. Right. So, like, just finding that balance. Although I told this group before it started, I'm thinking about starting something new. So, more on that later, maybe, or maybe not. Um, Laura, I'm going to ask you one more question, then we'll go to Kenny next. Um, Maybe talk a little bit about how giving back has shaped your personal and professional journey.
Yeah, I mean, I think it goes back to the fact that I just decided to say yes to an opportunity early in my career, which gave me a lot of opportunities for networking. I've got a fantastic network through Outdoor Afro across the country, but also leadership development. The role that I signed up for was an outdoor leader. So I had to get comfortable with things like guiding people and reading maps and public speaking and stuff that I really didn't have a ton of experience in. So ultimately, I think what it came down to is just training me in being comfy in those uncomfy spaces of like, this is ambiguous or this is new or I don't really know what I'm doing. And that's okay because to your first board experience, like you just shared with us, like you will quickly learn that you have the stuff, you have the skills to be great at whatever you try, as long as you say yes and show up with your full heart, right?
I love that. Kenny Devine, how has
Oh,
giving back outside of work enriched your sense of purpose and fulfillment?
yeah. Well, I love what I do here at Padilla and have some really great clients that I get to work on. But being able to volunteer and to, serve on different boards and work with different organization really helps kind of fulfill another passion of mine, and that is around the education space. I have had so many great teachers, from preschool, elementary school, and college with professors to then just mentors in my career. So I've always really appreciated those people that took time to help me to get to where I am today. So I just have a passion for paying it forward and doing the same for the next generation. So with all of my volunteering, I've really tried to center it around that idea of education and of mentorship. And it's really given me kind of a nice purpose to help that next generation. It's very rewarding then to hear, students that I've mentored or worked with say, I got my first job, or I recently got promoted. Really appreciate all that you did to, help me get to this point. So it's very fulfilling to really help that next generation and hopefully then instill in them to pay it forward as well once they get into a position where they're able to give back. So I feel like it just kind of builds a chain that is very, very important.
And at this point, I'm going to pause and apologize to our panelists and our attendees. I'm all hopped up on coffee, y'all, so I keep talking and really fast. And like, if you ever need to interject, just come off a mute or raise your hand or put something in the chat and get my attention. So would anyone else like to respond to that question? Go ahead, Eva. What did you put in the chat here? I'll open this up. Oh, this is to me. There used to be a nonprofit service that connected people with volunteer board positions. How or where do you find opportunities? Oh, you're asking me, you're asking the group, Eva, like where do you find opportunities to volunteer? That's a great question. I'm trying to think of the ways I've done it. I mean,
Hey, Leah,
yes, sir, Dan.
I I haven't looked at it in a while, but I think there's a website called like Volunteer Finder,
Okay.
and you just punch in kind of like what your interests are, and
Yeah.
it'll connect you with opportunities in your area.
Thanks, Dan. I'm also thinking hands-on Twin Cities. Is that a thing that connects? Okay, Laura's nodding. So that sounds like a good answer. Okay, great.
I think there's one more website, I don't know how used it is, but called Volunteer Match that some orgs use. I also like to sift through the Minnesota Council of Nonprofits website for opportunities.
Thank you. That's a good suggestion as well. And I will say, I don't know how many of you are Star Tribune subscribers. I do get the newspaper, like the actual physical newspaper every day. And I think it's on Saturdays in the variety section. Used to be the inspired section. Now they've
It
kind of
is.
smushed them together. But I think
It
they
is.
do list opportunities there. I always just check it out because I'm kind of curious. And I'm also curious, like, do people read that and respond to it? I don't know the answer, but that's another spot that you could look. Oh,
I
good.
also
Marcia, yeah.
I also have, when I was working at US Bank, I let people know, my colleagues know, that I was looking for a volunteer opportunity. And one came up about a month later after I put that email out, and I had a great time being on the communications committee for LifeTrack Resources, which helps people who are new to the area, who mostly immigrants, but not always, and they need jobs, and it helps find them jobs that help them have an income, but the companies that they work for were very grateful to have them. And it's a great success story, and it's something that I really enjoyed. But I think colleagues are a great way, a good source of options, places to volunteer.
Thanks, Amy. And Marcia put Greater Twin Cities United Way in there. So Marcia used to work there. And of course, I would be remiss if I didn't put in a plug for Minnesota PRSA, since I'm the volunteer liaison. So if you want to find out more about volunteer ops with the chapter, just let me know.
And hey, Leah, can I
Yeah,
jump in for a sec?
please.
So just following up on what Amy was saying, how she reached out to colleagues for suggestions, I think sometimes people just kind of need that personal ask or suggestion to get involved. And so if you can give your coworker or a friend an idea of where they could get involved, or, even bring them with you to your shift, if that's allowed, I think that can be super impactful, not just for the organization that you're helping, because you're helping them build their volunteer network, but also could be really impactful for your colleague or your friend. And it also is another way to kind of demonstrate leadership in action, because you're taking that extra step of getting other people involved too.
I will just pile on and reinforce this because I didn't come to find Outdoor Afro on my own. I was actually interning and my mentor told me about it. So colleagues, yes, all the way.
Mm-hmm. You guys, this is so good. I love this. I'm a mental, or not mental. Sorry. Y'all didn't hear the intro about my long day I had yesterday. Verbal processor, that's what I'm trying to say. So two more things PRSA related. One is we did a volunteer thing. Was it last fall, Marcia? I think it was November. Yes, I remember now. It
We
was,
did it a couple of weeks before Thanksgiving
yeah.
at Second Harvest.
And do you know if the chapter's planning to do something like that again this year?
I believe that they are. I know Greta
Okay.
is on the call, but yes, we are looking at because it was a great event, and so we're looking
Yeah.
at something like that again,
Yeah.
probably around Q4.
Yes. So Greta said we were sorting potatoes. So I had never been to Second Harvest before, so that was fun. And I think um, that's a great way to like check out an organization, right? Like I'm going to sign up for a shift. So if you've ever done Feed My Starving Children, like, well, I'm going to do this one thing for a few hours and see if I like it. So that was one thing I wanted to say. And then somebody uh, brought up, oh, mentorship. And I just want to give a shout out to our membership committee because they did start a mentorship program this year. So I am one of the mentors. Jordan, are you a mentor? I see you on here.
I am.
Yeah. Um, so yes, just want to make sure I'm plugging all the appropriate Minnesota PRSA things. Um,
I'll jump in and give a thumbs up to the Second Harvest Heartland activity for Minnesota PRSA. It was really great to be able to connect with people outside of the traditional networking, meeting, etc. And it inspired us enough that we actually had another event at Second Harvest Heartland with our extended team and our clients a couple weeks ago. And so, yeah, we tried it out. We had a great time with PRSA. We told our clients about, they're like, that sounds really wonderful. So we're like, okay, we'll organize one. And so that was a good thing to do. The other thing I would throw in, and maybe this will take the conversation in some different directions. It's really easy to find volunteer opportunities within communications because so many organizations need that help. But going back to what you said, Laura, about early in your career, some of my earliest volunteer opportunities were not in communications. I mean, I served on an endowment committee for a nonprofit, and boy, I knew nothing about endowments or foundations or investments. I served on another committee where it had an HR focus. And so I think that volunteering can allow you to try out some things that you don't get to do in your day job and learn skills that don't necessarily go along with your career track, but that will end up serving you very well and connect you with people in a different sphere than the ones that you spend your, Monday through Friday with.
Yeah, and I would jump in on that and just say focusing on different tasks or different work outside of communication, like that diversity of thinking, I think is really impactful and useful. Kind of breaks you out of your silo a little bit. So not only are you getting some new experiences, but you're learning how to think differently too.
And
yeah, and I would say, oh, go ahead, Paul.
I was going to say, can I jump into that too? Because the other thing it does, kind of using that analogy there, it really reinforces what we do as public relations professionals, right? You look at the systems differently when you see other parts of the things that operate within the bigger system. And so a lot of times as communicators, we think the communication goes from us to an audience, but really there's intermediate steps in there that you have to understand, and understanding those things better by doing different things and stretching your brain and learning different systems within a system is really helpful in doing your job better. So as a professional, it's helped me understand things I would never have understood. It's like Rose, you working on a committee that was outside of your thing. I volunteered 30 years ago on some youth stuff before we had kids, and that got me into someone said, well, you should look how education is funded in Minnesota. I didn't have kids. It didn't really impact me then, right? But I did. And now I've spent 30 years looking at educational design, both in the public and private sectors, and stretch myself to see how you can impact your world. And it's doing those things that are outside of yourself. There's a huge payback in ways you don't see. And one of my mentors always told me, the world is run by those who show up. And so I applaud everybody here this morning for being here, because I know I see a lot of familiar faces at these types of things, but we are the ones that actually make things happen because we do show up. And we do take the time to drive change and understand the systems that drive the change. And that is really truly what public relation is. It's a difference between, as everybody knows that's done the APR test, it's a difference between outputs and outcomes. And if you're going to drive outcomes, understand everything that goes into the system, and volunteering to do different things outside of what you know well is the best way to do that and understand that.
And just to build on a couple things that Rose and Paul said, yes, Rose, like being on a board, when you have a client that has a board, you kind of understand like that dynamic. I think that's helpful. And yes, Paul, showing up, with my gun violence prevention work, you start going to these meetings, whatever they are, community meetings, city council meetings, or whatever, and you start to see the same people and you understand, right? Like it's a pretty small group of people that are influencing this thing. So if you want to be part of it, yes to showing up. Okay, Eva put a question in the chat and I want to make sure y'all are getting what you want out of this meeting. So here's Eva's question. How do you foster a culture of volunteering in your work or at home? Kenny.
I'm happy to take that. Yeah, so I serve on it's called Padilla Plugged In, which is our kind of our corporate social responsibility piece at Padilla. And it's just been a really great way to really engage with the community here and then to get all of our staff here at Padilla involved. So I think there are certainly always opportunities at the different organizations that you work at to become involved and then get other staff members involved in the community. So that's been very rewarding, and most companies now offer that. So, if you're younger in your career, just starting off, like that's a great place to start because usually those committees say yes to everyone and want as much help as possible. So that's a really good place to start.
And I can jump into from the nonprofit perspective, having those corporate groups come help our organization is really impactful for our organization. Like not only is this group helping with whatever the task of the day is, whether it's animal enrichment, walking dogs, cleaning, but it's also a great way for us to spread awareness about all of the work that we do, and to build relationships with people who maybe have not engaged with our organization in the past. So it's really impactful for the organization too.
That's great.
I'll take a swing at home. That's a good question, Eva, because I'm like, am I doing this? And I will say yes, like my husband has been active with the men's club at our church. So, but I wanted to speak to like as a parent, has my volunteer work taken me away from my kids and my family? Yeah, sometimes. But I will say, for the gun violence prevention work, which is like an unpaid part-time job, I did it at a time when my oldest daughter was 20 and I had two teenagers. So if you think they were old enough, like they understood why I was doing it. So hopefully I'm a good role model for them. But I will just say too, if you have younger kids, Sarah Graves, it's okay. You don't need to like save the world right now. My guess is the world will still need saving when your son's in kindergarten or whatever time you feel like you have the capacity to take on something else besides raising a small human, which is a very important job.
I can also kind of jump in on that too. Sorry for
No.
jumping in, but so it is kind of stressful to try to figure out like, how am I going to make this fit in my extra time or my spare time? So what I've actually been able to do with my work at We Can Ride is the shifts that I would be filling are typically during my work day. And so when I first started getting involved with We Can Ride, I had a conversation with my then leader at my former organization and just explained what I wanted to do. And what we figured out would work for me was to have an every other week schedule. So one week I would work my regular 5 8-hour days. And then on the opposite weeks, I would work 4 9-hour days and 1 4-hour day. And that would allow me the time to volunteer at Week and Ride, which is technically during business hours, but still get my 40 hours in. And adding that extra hour onto my day every other week wasn't super impactful to my life outside of work. So that worked for me. And then when I moved to Animal Humane Society, I was able to use that schedule at my former organization kind of as a negotiation point with my new leader. And they've been really supportive of that and letting me continue that schedule at my current job too. So that might be something to consider as well. If you're in a role that has some flexibility, you know, could you shift your work schedule just a little bit to accommodate some volunteering if that's important to you?
Thanks, Sarah. Paul, did you want to say something too? I know we talked about what advice would you give to someone who wants to get involved but feels too busy?
Yeah, I think the best advice is to just do it. I mean, you can always find a reason not to do it. And I think, you know, what we've learned from the pandemic is the different formats of doing things, you know, virtual meetings and virtual things, and more work flexibility beyond the 8 to 5, I think has come in. So for example, my wife works at a law firm downtown, and they've allowed, because of the pandemic and stuff like that, they've allowed people to volunteer whenever they want. During their times, and they get paid to volunteer essentially. They'll give you a day off to go volunteer, and you can break that up. And so workplaces have been changing kind of the modes of having employees be able to do that. And I think that's in kind of a new thing that's come maybe in the last since the pandemic, really. And so I always tell people, like, you can do it in a way that makes sense to you. And a lot of the well-run nonprofits have people that are volunteer coordinators that actually will kind of customize, you know, time and space for you so you can volunteer at your time and at your space. So the way we used to do things is not the way we do things now in terms of volunteering. And I think we've cracked that code of realizing all the different ways that humans work and show up for volunteering and things like that. So what I always tell people is don't assume it's going to be one way when it can be the way you design it or you have it designed for you and what your volunteering looks like. And I think that's kind of one of the big takeaways that, you know, when I tell people, you know, show up, you can show up so many different ways and ways you probably haven't thought of possible in the past.
That's a great point. I love that, Paul. What I tell volunteers, whether it's for PRSA or other things I'm involved in, is like, look, this is not a life sentence, right? Like, there's no contract. Just try it. And if you decide, you know, this isn't the right fit, or I've got these other things going on in my life, like, you can step back gracefully. But I think the first step is step forward. And yes, I picked up a volunteer gig during the pandemic as well. Once I was forced to work from home and my key card stopped working here at West River Parkway, my church was looking for Meals on Wheels drivers, and it was only like once every 6 to 8 weeks, and it's like 1 hour over the lunchtime, and I'm like, well, I can do this, right? Like I can drive around my neighborhood and drop off some masks, or not some masks, some meals. So, um, but back to this theme of not a life sentence. That's something that I just stepped back from. Um, my husband and I are taking a year off from the parish we've belonged to for a couple decades and trying out some other things. And so I stepped back from that, which is why I now have capacity to do something else. And I did one more plug. I'm going to talk to DIDS, Kenny, and then I want to pass it back to you. But I think this was in response to the murder of George Floyd, which we're coming up on the 5-year mark. Padilla created a diversity and inclusion day of service, and you could take a day off to volunteer, and then you would share a little reflection on that. I just used it for the first time this past year. Don't ask me why. But I used it for an opportunity that came up through Minnesota PRSA. So Beehive hosted a half-day workshop. I think Kenny participated as well. The Brand Lab was looking for some marketing communications help. They are trying to get, this is a safe space, right? I'm just going to say they're trying to get diverse people into this profession. And so that's how I used my Diversity Inclusion Day of Service. Kenny, I was wondering, maybe do you want to speak to some of the different things that we've done through Plugged In here at Padilla, just because people are asking about volunteer opportunities? Maybe there's something that'll catch someone's attention.
Yeah, I think the model that we follow kind of falls into how people give back in general. So I always think of the talent, time, and treasures. So if you have the talent, like a communications background, helping organizations with communications, treasure, just being able to donate. All nonprofits need donations. Uh, Talent, time, and treasures, and then just like your time. So if it is a project that they need help on and they need people. So we've structured our plugged in opportunities around that. So each year we participate in the Greater Twin Cities United Way yearly campaign where we're asking our employees for donations. So we do some things like silent auction, a chili cook-off, potluck lunch. So really trying to focus on trying to raise money there. But then we also look for opportunities to engage our employees in doing a project. So it feels like they're contributing, their time to do something. So that's worked out nicely, and we've brought that kind of model to our company. I also think it's just a good model that works overall. There might be an organization that you really like, but you don't have the time to give back. So that treasure piece is important, and if you're able to give donations, but that's really resonated well with our employees here.
Kenny, you just reminded me of this walk I'm doing on Saturday, which Sarah, I don't know if people can still people still register for your walk on Saturday.
Yes, Walk for Animals, Minnesota State Fairground.
And I can't go to Sarah's walk because I'm doing a walkathon Saturday morning at Theodore Wirth Park. This is a fundraiser for Next Step, which is a program at Hennepin County Medical Center. So when someone comes in with a gunshot wound, Next Step is there to try to interrupt that cycle of violence, right? So, oh, you shot me, now I'm going to go out and shoot you or someone else. So, $15 to get a t-shirt. I'm participating if you want to join me for that. But yes, to Kenny's point, whenever I try and solicit people for the walk, I'm like, well, you can come walk with me, or if you don't want to walk or you're busy, I'm sure Next Step will take your money, right? So whatever you have, sometimes you have more time, sometimes you have more treasure, sometimes you don't have either, and that's okay as well. And I think to the point about being too busy, I wanted to share a story. So I'm the local group lead of Moms Demand Action for Gun Sense in America. We typically table at Pride. Last year, I kind of organized that myself without a lot of help. In the past, I've had co-leads. What I learned from doing that last year is that was too big for one person. It was too big for me. And I said, I'm not doing this again. I thought there were at least 3 roles. One is getting us signed up, getting all the paperwork done, the insurance, blah, blah, blah. 2 is recruiting the volunteers, scheduling them, communicating with them. And the 3rd is like just figuring out what actually goes in that space, getting that stuff there, packet pickup, all the things. So I was pretty clear, like early on this year, I said, I am not doing this myself. So I needed like at least 2 volunteers to help me. If I get at least 2 volunteers to help me, then we'll do it. And guess what? I have 2 volunteers, and I'm less stressed, less resentful. It's wonderful. So sometimes you do have to take a step back for other people to step up. So I just wanted to make that point. Also, somebody brought up immigrants. I don't know if it was you, Amy, but I do. One of my Moms Demand Action buddies works for Alight, and they are work with refugees, immigrants. And I know I just saw a post on Facebook looking for career coaches. So if that's something that interests you, hit me up there. And then I wanted to call out, is she still on camera? Maggie, you posted something and I don't know you very well, so I'm going to pick on you. Thank you for being brave and having your camera on. Do you just want to unmute and introduce yourself and tell us what brings you here today?
Sure. Hello. I know no one except Sarah. So hi, Sarah. I'm Maggie. I also work at Animal Humane Society. I'm on the marketing team, so marketing services supervisor. So I'm doing lots of project management in marketing and communications. So I put that in the chat. That's a website that I used. I'm in Stillwater, Minnesota, so I'm St. Croix Valley. And so that was specific to that area. I recently also, similar to Sarah, started on a River Valley Riders, which is also a therapeutic horseback riding program. So yeah, kind of lots of overlaps. I saw Sarah post about this event, so I thought I would join in. But yeah, I've been volunteering my whole life, in and out, kind of finding different organizations that I align with, and feel super lucky that I'm now at Animal Humane Society, where, you know, that aligns so perfectly with what I care about professionally and personally. And then now with the horseback riding program, just kind of opened up my world a little bit more in this community in Stillwater. So I moved here in 2020, so kind of felt like I don't know anyone, I'm new to the area, and so I've slowly kind of crawled out of the COVID hole, and volunteering has really helped me meet local people. So that's been really, really amazing.
Thanks, Maggie. I'm going to tell one more story, and then I would love questions from attendees. So during our prep call, I shared at some point during my 15 years at Weber Shandwick, I was like, I want to have one of those jobs that aligns with my interests or hobbies or passions or whatever. So I love the arts. If you follow me on social media, I love theater, visual arts, all the things. So I'm like, well, I'm going to get a volunteer job to show I'm serious, right? So I got my volunteer job at Minneapolis Institute of Arts. I volunteered at the Family Center. And I was like, I think I'm going to just stick with my for-profit job and my for-profit salary, and I'll just do this arts thing on the side as a hobby. So I figured out like, okay, I can scratch that itch without changing jobs, but I can do this other thing to fulfill this need that I had. And the thing I love that you said too, Maggie, is like, you meet cool people, you make friends. Like, it can be fun. I was on the board of an arts organization for 3 years. Oh my gosh, best gig ever. I went to shows, I went to artist talk. That was my job as a board member. I mean, I went to meetings too. Those were less fun and interesting, but inviting people to come do these things with me, and that was super fun. So if you can get that kind of board gig, I would recommend that.
I can
All
also
right.
jump in and just say on that point too, like working at a nonprofit, it's sometimes easy to have blinders on and get super invested in the work that our organization does. And that's important, but I think, it's good to keep work as work and have kind of that healthy boundary. So having a different place where you can give back and do good work is really important for me as a nonprofit employee, to still have a healthy work-life balance, but still give back.
Okay, now I'm going to pick on some people that have their cameras on that haven't spoken yet. So the other people are like scared. They're like, I'm not turning my camera on. But Hope, I know you. Hope, come off mute and tell this group about yourself.
Hi, Leah. Thank you so much. Good morning, everyone. My name is Hope Hansen. I work at Belmont Partners. I'm an assistant account executive. I was really excited to join this webinar today, not only because I see a lot of familiar faces, but also because I'm really interested in giving back. I've always really enjoyed volunteering. Within PRSA, I am a member of the communications committee that I just recently joined. So that's a way to give back within PRSA. Thank you. And then outside of work and PR related stuff, I'm really passionate about giving back to organizations that help people with disabilities. And so I've on and off volunteered for Special Olympics Minnesota and Highland Friendship Club, which provides programming for adults with disabilities. So that's me right now. And thanks, Leah.
Nice. Thank you, Hope, and thank you for volunteering for Minnesota PRSA. Sarah Graves, how about you? Come off mute and introduce yourself, please.
Hi, I'm Sarah Graves. I work for a charter school network in the Twin Cities, so Prodeo Academy, as you can see. And so again, I think one thing kind of what Sarah was talking about too, working in a nonprofit educational sector, we're a very mission-driven organization. And I think when people look at volunteering or things like that, I think people kind of think about that like our space in general, right? You know, we actually have a lot of corporate volunteers all the time and it's super fun. But for me, I have done different things over the years, and I wanted to kind of lift up what I think Paul and a couple other people had said, and Leah had said too, just kind of flexing some of my other skills and passions there. So I've served with Twin Cities Community Fund, and I just rolled off a wonderful tenure there. It was so much fun. But you know, in that space, they were always interested in my thoughts around communications, but also too, it was more about youth and kids, and I learned so much about financials, which is always a place where I feel like I need to learn more, and that can translate strategically into a lot of other places in my life. I also volunteered for the Minnesota African American Heritage Museum. And I was a person at the front desk who just said, "Hi, welcome." And I did it right after COVID. And it was also one of the other things that I love about volunteering sometimes is that it allows me to just kind of live in a different space. I think as communicators, we are always on. We're always the face of whoever we are working with. And so that is sometimes exhausting, and it's just a persona that is sometimes hard to turn off. So it was nice to be just another person moving chairs and saying hello and helping people experience the history, and especially doing this. I did this really soon after the George Floyd murder and everything like that. So it's really just connecting with community, and that's what I found. And as Leah was talking about, I have a young son right now, and when I volunteer now, I do one-off events and I take him with me. So we did our community cleanup on the major boulevard in my neighborhood, and I just pushed my stroller. I didn't pick up a piece of trash, but I talked to my neighbors and was there in community with them. So for me now, it's just finding those things that like fit into my life, but also allow me to have something different. So yeah, I don't know.
Thanks, Sarah. And just to give a +1 to the Minnesota African American Heritage Museum, did I get all the letters?
I think, yeah, it's a
Yeah,
great
if you haven't
place.
been there, go check it out. It's in North Minneapolis, and there's free parking because it's in that building, Marcia, and Sarah, where we've
Yeah,
had
I'm
the
paying.
DEI
Yep,
forum in
I'm
the
paying.
Yeah,
past.
it's the
So
same building.
Yeah,
yeah,
A
yeah.
little bit of history, a little bit of trivia, if you may. The images that they look like tiny pencil dots on the outside of the building. If you look closely, you see images of notable people. And one of them is the late Dr. Richard Green, for whom Green used to be Green Elementary, but now I believe middle school over in South Minneapolis. He was the first Black superintendent for Minneapolis Public Schools, and then went on to become chancellor in New York before he passed.
thanks, Marcia. And Sarah, your son's not school age yet, but believe you me, there will be, well, you know, you work in a school. There will be a lot of opportunities to volunteer at his school. And um, it's so funny, like once your kids are out of it, you kind of miss it. And like my husband went back to our kids' grade school, so we're like 4 blocks from Hale, which is where our kids went. And he's like, "Do you have any volunteer opportunities?" And they're like, I think they thought he was like a perv or something. They're like, No, thanks." But yeah, I would help kids read. I would volunteer in the lunchroom. So anyway, super fun.
And if I could even give a plug for schools,
Yeah.
just one thing looking at our volunteer, I mean, we have people, we have executives review financials, we have people filing stuff, we have people reading to kids, we have people moving things. Like a school is a little city, right? And there are so many things that go on there. And especially in the current climate with nonprofits, all of us experiencing tenuous funding at the federal level, there's we approach it when people want to volunteer for us, we always reflect back to them, what would bring you joy and ways to help us. And then we really tap into that. And like I said, we have people doing all kinds of things you might not think about volunteering at a school. So yeah.
Thank you for naming that, Sarah. Yes, and joy is resistance. Greta, I'm going to call on you. Would you like to come off mute and introduce yourself and say a little bit on this topic?
I would love to. Hi, everybody. I'm Greta LaFrenz. I'll be the president of PRSA next year. So I'm currently president-elect, and I've been working in the agency world forever, including formerly with Dan Hauser, which is super fun to always see Dan at PRSA events. I've done a lot of different volunteer activities, most recently through our the Carmichael Lynch and Carmichael Lynch relationship with Art Buddies is another great organization to get involved in. It's, you know, it's in the creative space, but you're volunteering in schools and you're working with young people who are, you know, really needing some attention and really looking for a creative outlet. So that's been a really rewarding experience. And I would highly recommend connecting with Art Buddies. If you haven't heard of it, I can tell you all about it. But also, I spent many, many years working or being part of Rotary, and there's a ton of opportunities in the Rotary space for volunteerism, not just because Rotarians are known for building things and creating things and figuring out how to make things happen in different communities. So through that, I was able to do a lot of really interesting things, both at the local level as well as the international level, which is kind of another neat aspect of not just your own community, but finding ways to connect, you know, worldwide. So I would just highly recommend those as opportunities. And there's a lot of similarities with Rotary and PRSA. What I have found that getting more and more involved in our chapter here and just kind of the logistics of it. So I've really enjoyed the things that we've been able to do as a chapter here in the community. And I hope that we can, I mean, I'm planning to make sure that that's something that's really important moving forward, just as long as I'm on the board. So there's a couple more years for sure.
Thanks, Greta. And Jill, I see you turned your camera on. I know you've been active in the chat. Do you want to unmute and say anything?
Yeah, it's a curly hair day. I'm giving a couple of exams this afternoon and I'm grading like crazy, in case you don't know, we're in the last week of school at the U. I talk about my students like they're my kids because my kids are grown, so they kind of are my students. But my seniors have been doing a semester-long project with the Parkinson's Foundation, and it was a way for me to get them writing samples that were real and client reviewed. So I have 14 seniors that have done all the media relations things for their Parkinson's Moving Day Walk, which is this Saturday, and they're all going to go volunteer for that. So, and they have been writing stories about people with Parkinson's for the website, because that's a crazy need. I think it was Paul, you talked about how these nonprofit groups need communications, right? So, and it also taught the students a lot about living with Parkinson's disease and how it's a life-changing diagnosis. But hopefully we'll have real media show up on Saturday, and they'll get to work with them. But they wrote a strat plan, did research and all that, which is super fun. But the reason that I put a note in the chat, Leah, was you talked about volunteering with PRSA. I would not be a university professor if it weren't for volunteering through PRSA. Y'all know I was in Iowa for 30 years before I came up north. I was the liaison for the Iowa State chapter for 15 years. And, you know, finally someone at Iowa State encouraged me to go to grad school and get on the staff there. And I taught at Iowa State for a couple of years and loved it. And then when I moved up here, I pursued that whole, like I did a sabbatical at Mankato and taught online for St. Mary's and weaseled my way into the U. And, you know, I love every minute of it. It's super fun. But I'm trying to help my students understand the importance of volunteerism as well. And
I love that, Go, keep going, Jill. Sorry.
Oh, I was just gonna say, Student Relations Council can't get rid of me, right, Kenny? I just never go away. I loved SRC so much that I keep injecting myself in SRC.
Can I jump in on that just a little bit?
Please.
I'm looking at Hope Hansen right now because she was one of my students back at St.
Aw.
Thomas, but I taught as an adjunct. I know Rose has, and I know Ava has, but I know with my students when I started teaching 10 years ago, they were still doing the same case study that at St. Thomas that I did 20 years before that, right? And it was about how to sell more TVs at Best Buy. And to me, that was kind of appalling because I was like, really? If we're a Catholic institution and our motto is all for the common good, what are we doing to really outreach to the community? And what I found by having my senior project students do something that was in the community. So we worked with a real nonprofit and exposed people to a real problem and they give a real solution. I mean, it kind of shows that same kind of way of like, I think kids of this age, I'm looking at Hope so she can disagree, liked it better to do something that was reality based in the community base. And I think the students that generation didn't want to do what my generation did, which was to sell more TVs at Best Buy. And I think that kind of speaks to the next generation we also have to be thinking of. And so for people that do things in the educational space, a lot of us are adjuncts or whatever, I do think that real life application of kind of like helping organizations by having the students volunteer for class makes a lot of sense. It's kind of a long stretch, but I think students liked it better and Hope you can say yes or no, but I think it was a better way to learn and also do something good at the same time.
Yes, my answer is yes. I couldn't agree more. It felt so good to make an impact, and it was more fun to talk about and share about too, because it didn't feel like work. It felt truly impactful, and it was fun.
It's
Jill,
also,
oh, go ahead. Eva.
I was gonna say, it's also for students a way to build their portfolio.
Right.
So whether it's, assignments in a class for a real organization or going out and volunteering, but as you've talked about, the workspace is changing in terms of when you can volunteer and where you can volunteer. And so often for the students that Greg and I had and that Eva has at Metro State, because they're working full-time and going to school full-time, it was very hard to find traditional internships. And so we would always encourage volunteering. Is there something in your neighborhood? Is there something in your faith community? Is there something where you can get involved and write something, do some social media, connect with people, host an event? Sometimes you have to create those volunteer opportunities. And so I think if we can instill that and as adjuncts provide that pathway, it does become a lifelong opportunity. And I think that's another thing is volunteering is a very American pursuit. It's not as common. And so kind of instilling that this is another pathway and another part of being part of the world.
Yeah.
So embrace the volunteers.
Thanks, Rose. Bye, Betsy. Eva, I want to be mindful of it's 9:25. I can talk for 5 more minutes, but if you have like wrap up type activities for us too, I want to give you space to do that.
I kind of wanted you to lead this, so I didn't have to. So
okay.
I was telling Mel this morning, I was like, yeah, this is great because Lee's gonna lead it and I could just sit there and watch.
I know. That's nice, isn't it?
But I guess for me, I just want to add in the reason this topic came up was because I look around and I hear a lot from the younger generations about volunteering, the need for volunteering. And it was volunteering month just yesterday. But I think that we need to encourage and support volunteering in all its forms, not just volunteering for PRSA. We've got more we can give, and especially like Paul said, communication is a gift. I used to say when people ask me for money, I say I'll give you my time because I get more value, personal satisfaction from giving my time than from giving my money. When some people like to write a check, I like to help. So it's always, I think giving back is an important thing, important part of our profession, and I'm glad we can talk about it today.
Thanks, Eva. And what I was starting to say, Jill, I love the project with your students, because another Padilla belief is called walk in their world. And I think if you don't know with someone with Parkinson's, if you haven't been personally impacted by it, right, you can just kind of put it in a box over there. Um, and so before everybody joined, I was telling our panelists, I used to be on the board of Volunteers of America, Minnesota and Wisconsin, and they have this program called Amicus that pairs people with incarcerated folks. So hopefully when they're done serving their time, they've got a friend on the outside to ease that transition. Um, and if your only experience of prison, like me, is a tour at Alcatraz, or maybe you've seen stuff on television or films, why would you ever believe that someone could be rehabilitated? But when you go to this event and you hear from folks that are on the outside now, are getting their master's degree or whatever, it's like amazing. So that might be my new thing. I've now told approximately, yeah, I can't, 4 times 4, 16, 17. I've told 18 people. I haven't told my husband yet, but I might be doing that next. But yes, to students, I also feel a need, since we're on the students thing, to give a plug for 360 journalism. Just won an award with them last week, which always feels good. Currently housed out of University of St. Thomas, although had its roots in University of Minnesota, and I've got 2 Gophers and 1 Tommy, so I play on both teams. But they are always looking for writing coaches, editors. They do a lot of programming in the summer, so if that's of interest,
College essay prep.
please. Oh yeah. Um, would love to tell you more about that. I know my Tommy during J term had to do some volunteering, and I think sometimes it's okay to volunteer for stuff and decide, like, you learn things no matter what, good or bad, right? Like either I like that or I don't like that. Go, Marcia.
In 30 seconds,
Yes.
one of the underlying themes that I heard today is the connectivity that we can make with each other. I know that volunteering through PRSA and other organizations, some of the relationships that I've developed have become so valuable, and support systems, friendships. And the other thing that volunteering can do is to help us learn to not other people. It takes us into relationship, whether it's working with those who are leaving the prison system, those who are transitioning into homelessness, from homelessness, excuse me, or who have experienced food insecurity, or who are dealing with a debilitating illness. It moves us from othering them to developing relationship with them.
That's an excellent point, Marcia. Thank you for sharing that. Okay, I've got 1 more minute, so I'm going to tell you 2 more things about VOA. One of the things that was appealing about joining that board, besides the fact that I was asked, was I knew that they were putting their board through the intercultural development inventory. I had heard about that from a client, so I was like, yes. Bye, Maggie. I'm like, that's something I want to do. And then I also traveled to Washington, D.C. with the woman who was the executive director at the time for Advocacy Day on the Hill. So, like, yes, you're doing good for the organization, and y'all might get some nice things out of it too. Okay, people are dropping. They are sick of hearing from me. Anyone else can come off of mute if they want to say any parting
To
thoughts.
say one parting thought. Thank you
Yes.
so much. But I encourage all of you to take some time today to encourage somebody else to go volunteer. Help connect someone with a volunteer opportunity. It's kind of the passive forward kind of philosophy. So that's my goal for all of you. And I think Jill had something to say too.
Oh, I just wanted to say thank you for anybody who ever helped Brand Lab. I have had several students where that Brand Lab internship transformed their career. And they were struggling to find an internship, and that really changed their trajectory. So awesome organization. Love the work they do.
Thanks, Jill. Dan, Emily, any parting thoughts from you?
I would just say we've talked a lot about encouraging young people to volunteer, but as people like me get closer to retirement, they're going to have a lot of time on their, well, they will have more time on their hands. And so I do that all the time, is encourage people getting close to retirement that, hey, nonprofits need your knowledge.
Thank you, Dan, from keeping us drifting into ageism. You're right. I have a mom's demand action buddy, and her husband, I think drives for open arms like every day, and it's in the middle of his workday, so or not workday, and it's like late morning. So she said it gives him that structure, like he
Mhm.
doesn't have to get up early and go to work, but he gets up and he knows, oh yeah, I've got to go drive for open arms. And yes, purpose, I've heard, key to a long life is having purpose.
One more thing, Leah, thank you to all the mentors. Oh my God, I've gotten so much good feedback from the students about that. Dan, I heard someone in your group just the other day tell me how great their mentorship group was. So, hey, and I said, Dan Hauser, I know him. We were on the board together a long time ago. And they're like, oh, Jill, you know everybody. Yes, I do.
If people have to drop, I know we're over time, so feel free. But Emily, any last words from you?
I think everything's been so well said. Thank you for pulling this one together, and thank you to the panelists and everybody who contributed. Excited to be among such wonderful leaders.
Thanks, Emily. Well, thanks, Eva, for asking us. Thank you, Paul, Laura, Kenny, Sarah, for being on the panel. Thanks for everyone for showing up and turning your cameras on and coming off mute and being brave. And even if you just listen, that's okay too. Have a good day.